right. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. First of all, as we start another year, it's my pleasure to once again come before you and share the accomplishments of the past year, as well as what we think is coming up in 2025 and beyond. I'd also like to thank the Oregon City Business Alliance for once again inviting me to come kick off the new year here with a presentation. I'm not sure, I think this is maybe my 8th or 9th time doing this. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to get in front of folks and talk about the amazing things that the city commission, our staff, and our community have done. I'd also like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to come hear what I have to say. So hopefully you find this informative and look forward to any questions, most of the questions usually, that you all have for me at the end. I'd like to acknowledge the city commissioners here, and actually I believe we have Mayor Denise McGriff with us here today. I'd also like to acknowledge Commission President Rocky Smith, Commissioner Morrow, Commissioner Mitchell, and our new Commissioner Scott Wilson. It's easy to forget that despite all the time they spend on the commission, it's a volunteer position, and they are not getting paid for all the time that each of them dedicates to the residents, businesses, and community members of the city. Not only at city commission meetings, but numerous committees and boards throughout the region that have direct impacts on our community. So please join me in thanking them for the public service they provide all of us. I would also like to acknowledge the department heads that are here as well. They set the tone for their departments, and I'm truly proud of the work that they do, how they lead, and the projects and the programs that they and their staff deliver to the community members of Oregon City on a daily basis. So if I could have my directors stand up so we can just acknowledge you real quick. Police Chief Sean Davis. Our IT Director, Mike Dobai, our HR Director, Patrick Foyles, our Economic Development Manager, James Graham, our Community Development Director, Aquila Hurd-Ravitch, our Deputy Parks and Recreation Director, Tom Kissinger, our Library Director, Greg Williams, our City Recorder, Jacob Wiley, our Finance Director, Matt Zook, our Assistant City Manager, Alex Rains, and our Public Works Director, Dana Webb. Dana has been the city engineer until replacing our former director, John Lewis, who happens to be in the crowd today. He retired after 20 years with the city last year. As you'll hear, there's a lot happening in Public Works. And Dana has certainly been up to the challenge, and we're excited to have her overseeing all the efforts that they're performing. I also want to acknowledge the tremendous job that our Deputy Parks Director, Tom Kissinger, is doing. Shortly after taking that position, our Parks Director left for another opportunity. Despite that, his brief time in the position and here at the city, he's done an admirable job keeping the department running smoothly, along with our Assistant City Manager, Alex Rains, who has helped take on any director-level work and needs during the interim. This is a vital position, and we're looking to find the right person for that role. So we've engaged the services of an outside agency to help us recruit and find the right match. And we hope to have that filled by the beginning of the summer season for parks. I'd also like to thank Jared Lyman, our communications manager. I wouldn't be able to give this presentation, put all this together without his help. So I really appreciate all that he does, helping me with this, as well as all those great Facebook posts that are coming out of the city lately. I know I've said this before, but I cannot stress enough how grateful I am to have such a talented team of professionals around me, challenging me and supporting me. Our staff have hundreds of interactions a day with our community members, providing services, addressing problems, and responding to concerns. And the vast majority of those interactions go well. A testament to not only the services the employees of Oregon City provide, but also how they provide them. And I'm proud of our organization, and I hope you are as well. Before we get too far into the presentation, last year's trivia icebreaker seemed to go over pretty well, so I thought I'd take another shot at it. So, get ready. You got a couple seconds at your table, and let me know who gets all these right as we move forward. So, leading off, how many miles of roadway are Oregon City Public Works crews responsible for? Between 135 and 170. So there are 144 miles of roads, which includes alleys in Oregon City. This does not include the 6 miles in our jurisdiction that is under county jurisdiction and the 12 miles that are controlled by the Oregon Department of Transportation. So if you said 162, I'll give you that one as well. We recently completed our community survey, which we perform every 2 years, and the results were recently presented to the City Commission. What percentage of the residents rated the City of Oregon City as an excellent or good place to live? And what is the national average for that same question? So the answer is the national average is 49%. The Oregon City average is 78%. I would also like to thank our staff for providing excellent customer service. 91% of the respondents indicated that their encounters with staff were courteous and polite, and 76% of the respondents felt that the staff provided prompt, accurate, and complete answers to their questions. It is unfortunate that, like most things these days, the conflict and disagreements get the headlines. But these statistics demonstrate that there is a tremendous amount of programs, services, interactions, and projects that are going well in Oregon City. And that should be acknowledged and celebrated. The final question. Our Concerts in the Park continues to be one of the most popular events in the community. About how many people do you think attended last year? It's an estimate, so go ahead and round it to the nearest 100. Park staff is estimating approximately 7,200 attendees. It's hard to get a full count since the concerts are free, but anyone who's attended one can quickly tell just how our community loves those events. And our team has already begun the process of planning for next year's events, which I'm sure will go just as well. As you know, our work is informed by the goals outlined by the City Commission. At the start of our biennial budget process, we are coming up on the end of our current biennium, and the Commission will be crafting the next set of goals in a few short weeks. For now, these are some of the accomplishments we've achieved as we get ready to head into the next biennium. The first thing I'd like to talk about is that multiple departments were involved in the work with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in the design and construction of Phase 1 of the Cayuse 5 Memorial on the McLaughlin Promenade. This is a project that's been talked about since before I started here. Mayor Dan Fowler was involved in original discussions back in the 1990s. It has been really great to see a project like this come to fruition. There was coordination across departments. I'd like to thank the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, as well as the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, in working together to ensure that that project is successful. It's a really, really great memorial with a testament to what happened related to the Cayuse 5 hangings in Oregon City. And I urge everyone to take a walk down the McLaughlin Promenade, especially on such a beautiful day like today, and take a moment to stop and read the history that occurred. Last night, the Planning Commission approved amendments by the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde to the plan for the Blue Heron property. So it's one step closer to the eventual redevelopment of that property. We really do appreciate the relationship that we've been able to form with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, working on such a complex property that will bring immense economic development opportunities to the south end of Oregon City. We really do appreciate their efforts, and it's a little bit different working with a developer and a property owner who has so much investment in not only the development and it being successful, but the land on which it's actually built on. So we really do appreciate their investment in Oregon City, and we look forward to working with them for decades to come. You've probably seen our public works crews out in the community a lot over the last year, and they have been busy with numerous planned projects and responding to unplanned events. One defining element of our community is our history. While that is certainly a source of pride for most of us, old cities also come with old infrastructure. That has been the focus of a lot of our work and our crews over the past year, and it will continue to be over the next coming years. Many of our neighborhoods have seen evidence of this firsthand with our inflow and infiltration work, or I&I. While it doesn't sound very exciting, the I&I work that our teams have been performing actually has quite the positive impact on our community. What our teams do is prevent stormwater and groundwater from making its way into our sewer system, especially during heavy rain events. All that additional runoff can end up in residents' basements or causing sewer overflows. Additionally, we end up paying for the treatment of clean water that doesn't need it. By limiting this inflow, we save money on treatment, the need to add capacity at the treatment plant or our sewer system because of the rainwater, and from potential property damage. I would like to thank the Water Environmental Services Board and Director Geis for creating a program where local governments can receive reimbursement for 1/3 of a qualifying I&I project. Leveraging our local investments to improve the sanitary sewer system and saving residents money over the long term. It is a great program in partnership that has increased Oregon's ability to address I&I in our older neighborhoods. Another project to update our aging infrastructure is the Molalla Avenue Water Transmission Main Project. Put simply, it's updating the capacity and reliability of water lines in Molalla Avenue that are decades old, increasing the capacity to provide water to our reservoirs and eventually to our community members. Funding for all this work is coming from low-cost financing from the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, which the city applied for and received after voters authorized the borrowing of up to $38 million in 2021. Approving the debt and being awarded the loan will allow approximately 5 years worth of needed water infrastructure projects to be completed in Oregon City. The project is identified as one of the top priorities in the 21 Water Master Plan and is also the largest. The prep work for it has been happening over the last couple of years, with design work being completed last year and construction is slated to begin this spring and last for about a year. Because of the linear nature of this work, we'll be able to better estimate the location of the work, and we'll do our best to mitigate the traffic impacts associated with this critical water infrastructure investment. Last year, I was able to report that we had signed an agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for funding to begin the construction of the Quiet Zone at 10th and 11th Street. Since then, crews have been undertaking some of the first steps to make this project a reality. A team took several geophysical samples late last year, and survey crews have been out on site. The information will provide engineers with the data they need to be able to move forward with the construction plans, which are at about 30%, and to update the cost estimates to implement that project. There's still a lot of prep work that needs to come, but it's exciting to see progress happening on that project. One of the projects I'm most excited about is our continuing efforts at ensuring Oregon City is a safe, inclusive community to live and to work. Since then, we've contracted with Lamont Brown of Triangle Consulting, who has been working with staff and residents, outlining steps that we can take at all levels to ensure that Oregon City is a community that any and all can live in and work in. We've engaged in an employee stay survey to identify what we're doing right and areas we can improve to create a working environment that is competitive and a place employees want to stay over the long term. We've taken the information from that survey and already taken several steps to work with our staff to ensure we meet those needs where we can and make sure every voice is being heard. The community work group has been active as well. They have been given the flexibility to identify the needs of the community and shape their work based off the feedback that they've been gathering from residents at multiple events. The work these two groups are doing is helping to meet the Commission's goal of ensuring Oregon City is welcoming, inclusive community, both to live in and work in, and I'm excited to see where this ends up. One aspect of Oregon City that has the overwhelming majority of residents always appreciate is our public library. It's hard to get 80% of people to agree about anything, but more than 80% of our residents once again reported they're happy or extremely happy with the quality of our library services in our most recent community survey. There's a good reason for that, and I'm incredibly proud of all the many programs and services our library team puts together on a daily basis. One new program we announced last year was a partnership with the Oregon City School District, a big thank you to them, that gave every student the opportunity to sign up for a library card when registering for school. We were the first library in Clackamas County to offer this program, which proved exceedingly popular as nearly 2,000 students immediately took advantage of the program after it was launched at the start of the school year. As of last count, approximately 2,500 students have signed up for their library card through this service. Our library staff exemplifies our city's dedication to serving our constituents and are continually looking at ways to expand their offerings. Another new program they launched last year was the Library by Mail. The innovative program gives residents who are homebound access to library materials. As staff members connects with each patron who qualifies and provides them with their selected holds every 2 weeks, and also provides a postage paid return label so the items can be mailed back. It's been another popular program ensuring all residents have access to their city service regardless of their mobility. Another example of the lengths our library team will go through to ensure that they can serve their patrons is happening right now. The floors in the historic Carnegie building are being replaced. Our team has been pulling out all the stops, doing everything they can to maintain as many services as possible during that work. From setting up a temporary circulation area in the community room to partnering with the Pioneer Center to host regular programs, the team has already shown remarkable dedication, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them for all those efforts. Another team that has been putting a lot of effort to help our residents is community development. They've been working hard along with our IT staff to move the permit application process online, with residential trade permits now happening through the online customer portal. Additional services will be added in the coming years, which will help streamline the process for customers and staff alike. Housing continues to be a primary concern for many residents, and there has been a lot of movement on that front. The 2 projects on Maple Lane are complete, which added approximately 387 new units to the inventory. Additional residential units will be up for sale soon as part of the Thimble Creek South subdivision. While more housing is needed, it's a delicate balance that the City Commission, Planning Commission, and Community Development Department must navigate. Trying to maintain the character of the community while also allowing for needed housing and following the mandates from the state that have removed a lot of the city's discretion when it comes to permitting developments. Another group that deserves accolades is our Parks Department. The level of service they provide residents is a frequent topic of compliments that I receive. One great example that is the new 4th of July event that the team put on at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Summer. The commission, led by Commissioner Morrow, voiced their desire to see a city event celebrating Independence Day. And with their support, our parks team delivered in a manner that was above and beyond what I think anyone would have expected for a first-year event. The laser light show was a hit, as was the music and overall festive atmosphere. With that success last year, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they put together this year. From the early planning conversation I've been hearing, it will meet and surpass last year's success. That event added to an already busy slate of summer programming they put together, including concerts in the park, movies in the park, numerous swimming lessons and camps at the pool, almost daily events at our facilities. The calendar is filled with things to do for our residents and community members. I would also like to highlight once again the amazing work that the Pioneer Community Center does for our community members, providing excursions, classes, and programming that enriches the lives of those that participate. And I would also like to recognize the amazing efforts of the volunteers and staff that year after year continue to provide meals and visits through the Meals on Wheels program, a vital and life-saving program that touches many in our community. Homelessness continues to be a priority in the city. Responding to immediate needs and investing to improve the options and responses that we provide as a city. Working with Clackamas County, we're finalizing 2 grant agreements for additional caseworkers to assist our behavioral health specialists and the creation of a municipal court level community court. This is really important as we try to address homelessness in our community. We've invested, we were a leader in the region for jurisdictions of our size, investing initially with a homeless liaison officer, a behavioral health specialist that's embedded in our police department. And now we're finding, providing a caseworker that can help our behavioral health specialists follow up with the customers and clients in our homeless community as they navigate this system with an end goal of providing housing. I'd also think it's important to recognize that the community court at the municipal court level, I think, will be a great improvement for our community. Arresting, putting someone in jail, fining them, it's ineffective. And so having a community court that can focus on those needs of mental health, substance abuse, housing, domestic violence in a way that can partner with the behavioral health specialists and the case managers that we're bringing online, we think will be a much more effective way to start to move folks that are having impacts in our community into a transition into a more stable housing situation in the long term. Commissioner Wilson was chosen to be the city's representative on the board of the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County, providing a city liaison voice to the work and plans of the coalition. As many of you are aware, the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County purchased Miles Fiberglass down on Main Street and is in the process of demolishing that building and putting together the plans for a new facility to be constructed there. And as I said last year, I realize there are many opinions and views on homelessness in Oregon City. But I once again do believe that consolidating the services that we provide in this community, which are dispersed all throughout the city, into one location will be much more effective and efficient than the way we do things right now, which, as I've said before, is what I believe our residents want. It's for us to be efficient in how we spend our money and how we deliver services. So if you can imagine, we have a facility where now we have a municipal community court. And as you walk out of that door from the community court, you have resources that are there waiting for you as the customer or the client who's just been through that process. You have a caseworker that can be identified. You have mental health services that are available. You have housing services that are available. You have a doctor that could assist with any medical conditions. Having those services in one location will make the process more efficient and more effective. So I do applaud their efforts. I also acknowledge that it's scary. Change is scary. If they build it, they will come. Really the objective here is to really work with the Clackamas Community Housing Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County, and they've been thoughtful in the design and trying to address and identify what those impacts will be up front. What can we do around security on that site? What can we do to make sure that we have the context necessary so that if something does happen at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, we have the resources and the numbers to call to be responsive to those incidents that we know happen. They do. I also believe this will be a benefit. One of the questions last year was about impacts on the hospital. Much like our police department, they were not set up to deal with homeless issues, mental health issues on a nightly basis, right? But it's become the safety net at the bottom that has to address it because it's the only place left. So being able to have resources available that are more appropriate frees up emergency room space, hospital space, police responses, all moving forward. That's the goal. That's my expectation. And now it's how do we make that a reality as this facility comes online. The Commission has also made significant progress in the creation of a destination marketing and managing organization. The DMMO will focus on improving and expanding the tourism footprint of Oregon City with a goal of showcasing and promoting what Oregon City has to offer to increase visitors and drive economic development. The framework for the new organization has been approved by the city, and the Commission will be interviewing and appointing board members in the near future. There have been many questions about urban renewal in Oregon City. Currently, urban renewal is limited by the existing charter limitations in the City of Oregon City Charter that prohibits taking on debt or entering into agreements or contracts over 1 year without a vote of the people. There is no existing litigation outstanding that will address this issue. The Urban Renewal Commission updated their plan over a year ago and went out for a vote last May to approve debt that would be paid for by the existing increment being collected by the district. Unfortunately, the vote failed. The Urban Renewal Commission will be having a discussion in February about how to move forward. And as you can imagine, there are many options and opinions, from closing the district to going out for a vote to improve the indebtedness or remove Section 59 from the charter, to asking a court to determine if the section is enforceable. Some of you may recall that Section 59E of the Oregon City Charter related to limitations on the district was found to be unenforceable, but it did not address the remaining sections. I am hopeful that the Urban Renewal Commission will come to consensus on how to move forward with the City of Oregon City Charter requirements and determine whether urban renewal is a viable economic development tool in Oregon City and how it should move forward, more importantly. The Urban Renewal is working on many other projects as well. One, addressing water quality in Clackamas Cove and preparing the Stimson property for redevelopment. The agency is working with a consultant to try to determine what causes the occasional blue-green algae blooms in the cove, and to identify if there are improvements that can be made to reduce the factors contributing to those blooms and improve the overall water quality of that body of water. A second project is the Stimson property. It's located between the Amtrak station and Metro on Washington Street, and it's a priority project for the agency. Geotechnical work has been completed on the subsurface conditions, a no further action letter from Department of Environmental Quality has been verified, and we are currently working to vacate the old 82nd Avenue rights-of-ways that cross the property. The Urban Renewal Commission will be soliciting bids for the redevelopment of the project in the near future, most likely requesting a mixed-use hotel development on the site. As we begin 2025, there are many exciting and challenging opportunities and projects that will be occurring. The city completed a facility plan that identified an immediate need to address the Oregon City swimming pool and the end of the Oregon Trail Museum. I would anticipate that the City Commission will be focusing on what to do with the existing pool. Should it be replaced? And if so, where should it be located and how should it be paid for? We are also looking forward to working with the new executive director of the End of the Oregon Trail, Corrine Lowenthal, and to understand the plans she and the board are preparing for the activities, events, and spaces at EOT. I would also like to recognize and thank Gail Yazzolino, the longtime executive director for the End of the Oregon Trail, who recently retired. Her commitment to the museum, the property, and the programs over many, many years is greatly appreciated and took a tremendous amount of energy and ingenuity to accomplish. State-level transportation funding will be back again. The legislature will be working to identify a long-term funding strategy to support transportation improvements, and I would expect that tolling will be a part of that conversation. The Commission has worked tirelessly with surrounding communities and elected officials to stop the standalone tolling of the I-205 bridge and to address the impacts of traffic diversion if tolling is implemented on the local street network. I have no doubt this effort will continue during the existing legislative session. Additional opportunities upcoming are working with Clackamas County on the transition of the courthouse from Main Street to Red Soils Court, working to reactivate that site as quickly as possible, a historical engine for the economic activity and businesses down on Main Street. We also look forward to working with the county on the Liberty Plaza that's currently there, a well-used open public space in the downtown. For many of you, some probably remember there was originally the Liberty Theater was located at that location and had to be demolished several years, well, more than several, 20-some years ago. Amazing how time flies sometimes. And Liberty Plaza was built in its place. So what are those opportunities to work together to find a viable option to maintain an important public open space in our downtown? Identifying funding for important transportation projects such as Redland Road and 213, Beaver Creek and 213 north right turn lane, and the connection between Holcomb Boulevard and Redland Road to better serve the Park Place neighborhood and development of the Park Place concept plan. These improvements will need coordination and cooperation of multiple jurisdictions. ODOT owns Highway 213. The county owns Beaver Creek Road and Redland Road. They're both inside the city limits of Oregon City. The connection from Holcomb down to Redland would be an important transportation corridor, not only to provide an alternative access off of Holcomb Boulevard, but also to open up potential developable lands for housing, which is desperately needed in our community. But these do need coordination and cooperation amongst the agencies, and I hope that we can continue to have that moving forward as we try to identify funding for these really important projects in our community. So that was a pretty quick sampling of some of the city's accomplishments over the past year. As always, we're looking ahead to the rest of the fiscal year and beyond. You may recall that Oregon City operates on a biennial budget, and we're coming up on the new biennium that will start on July 1st. The process has already started with departments starting to put their budgets together. It's a preliminary step, and we'll be meeting with our commission for a 2-day goal-setting retreat on February 7th and 8th at the Clackamas Community College. The recently completed community survey identified the following as overall priorities based on importance and satisfaction levels. maintenance of city streets, increased effectiveness of economic development, enforcement of city codes and ordinances, increased quality of recreational programs, increased effectiveness of communication, improving the overall quality of city parks, trails, and open spaces. Traditionally, the Commission, using information gleaned from the community survey, comments from prior meetings, and their conversations with residents, will work with the department heads to identify where the city will focus their efforts for the 25 through 27 budget cycle. Department heads will use those priorities to finalize their budget proposals, which will make their way to the Budget Committee. Once the Budget Committee approves a proposed budget, it will then go before the City Commission for final approval, preferably before June 30th of this year. You may have heard on the news how a number of various other agencies in the state are looking at some pretty serious budget gaps. I'm happy to report that Oregon City is not in this position, as our managers have done a good job of managing to the budgets that have been approved. That said, the same fiscal realities that each of us faces in our businesses and our personal lives affects the city as well. Costs have gone up dramatically while revenues have increased marginally. Combined with the loss of one-time money infusions such as ARPA, I've directed the executive team to be fiscally conservative when budgeting for the next biennium. We will continue to be cautious and prudent in our budgeting recommendations to ensure the continued and long-term fiscal health of Oregon City. As I close, it was interesting, folks have asked how the last year went. And I guess it's all relative sometimes, right? We didn't have an ice storm, we didn't have fires, we didn't have protests, we didn't have riots, we didn't have COVID, we didn't have so it's kind of boring, I guess, in some ways. But at the same time, a lot of what we do is delivering services to our community members, and a lot of that just goes on without a lot of fanfare, but hopefully you see in some of the results that we've had that our community does appreciate that and that we are delivering services in a pretty efficient and effective manner. There's always going to be points of contention and disagreement as we work through these processes. There are big decisions that have to be made that impact this community for decades to come. But I do appreciate the work that my staff does. I really appreciate the City Commission and their ability to work together on difficult issues to find consensus and direction that we can implement as staff on behalf of the community. So I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be a really great upcoming 2 years. I think we'll continue to build on the momentum that we have, delivering projects in an efficient way, communicating with our community members so they know what's happening, are all areas where we've done a good job. We can always improve, and we'll strive to do that. So with that, I'll go ahead and conclude my presentation. Thank you once again for taking the time to come out today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Appreciate it.
Yep.
I'll let you go ahead and stay up here. And
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Now it's time for Q&A. Actually, we've got 45 minutes, so don't be shy. Take a little blue card. Go ahead and write down what's on your mind. If you're watching the slides from Tony, we got him, so we don't want to lose him while we have him
As a captive audience. So I'll kind of. Obviously, we know the courthouse is something that's been given a lot of attention. Give me a bad mic. There we go. I think the county's planning on vacating the facility on Main Street, moving up to the Red Soils Complex, May or June of this year. Pardon? Well, sometime this year, probably in the summer. But with that being said, I understand there is a process that's taking place with the county commissioners to go ahead and request proposals from private entities to take over the space and renovate it. And I know last week, Mayor McGriff talked about using urban renewal funds to help facilitate that renovation. Do you know what that process is going to consist of? They turned me on and turned you off. Matthew? Well, here, I'll give you my mic. Well,
test.
Well, he comes in.
Magnetic hand. There we go. I think that the county is moving forward with a process to look at potential proposals for redevelopment of the property. I think from the city's standpoint, and we're going to be meeting next week to talk about this a little bit more at the city commission level, is what are those opportunities, as I stated during the presentation, to look at how can we maintain some of that public open space that's down there. That's really become the only open space that's available on Main Street. But then how can we be involved as a city or urban renewal in what happens with that property? So being involved as maybe potentially part of the reviewers that look at proposals that come in, as well as having discussions about what that future use of that property is. So I think it's still pretty early on. It'll be great to see what kind of responses are received, what kind of interest there is in the property, and then how we can continue while that process is going on at the city and county level, continuing to work together to identify, how we can identify a path forward that's beneficial for all involved. I do appreciate, I know Mayor McGriff was allowed time to speak at the county commission meeting last week, I believe. And one of the things that came out of that was an opportunity for the Board of County Commissioners and the City Commission to sit down together to have a discussion about what those opportunities may be. So I know my commissioners and the mayor really appreciate that opportunity to be able to have that conversation.
All right, great. We're going to be sharing here for a while. From watching the news, we see the federal efforts to arrest and deport illegal immigrants. Will the OC Public assist ICE in their efforts?
No, we're looking at that. There is existing state laws in Oregon that prohibit the ability for local jurisdictions to share certain types of information with ICE. Those type of issues that ICE enforces that relates to border policy is a federal government responsibility. The Oregon City Police also will not interfere either. We will follow the state laws as identified by the state of Oregon that our police department is responsible to enforce where they can and where they can't.
Okay. We're going to bounce around here a lot, okay? Other than fighting tolling down in Salem, does OC have legislative priorities for this year's legislative session? That's one part. The other part's a little more personal. What's the best part about being Oregon City City Manager?
Legislative priorities. We've done a lot with our representative and senator at the state level. They've been great working with their staff on trying to identify those opportunities for some of the larger infrastructure projects that we need in Oregon City. So we've had those conversations going back, and we'll continue to have them going forward. Really, it's when those pots of money open up at the state level, how can we make sure that our projects are compelling for the criteria or making them competitive in the selection process moving forward. So we've identified funding for an additional reservoir south of the city. We need another reservoir out there. The 213 right turn lane from Beaver Creek Road onto 213 is a project that we've identified and continue to lobby for additional funding to get that project completed. It'd be a huge benefit for folks coming into the city and onto 213 towards 205. The other project I talked about was 213 and Redland Road, additional turning capacity from Redland onto 213 North, and then also the Holly Lane connection from Holcomb Road down to Redland Road. So those are kind of our big projects that we have asked for. Last legislative cycle, we were successful in getting additional funding for Main Street from 10th to 15th. So you'll be seeing, similar street improvements that we did several years ago from 5th to 10th. So streetscape project from 10th to 15th. So we were successful last legislative session, and we'll continue to engage to try to identify where the projects we have fit in the funding that's available at the state level. It's stuff like this. Getting to meet folks, getting to work with folks, getting to see projects come to fruition. Working with a great staff who is really good at what they do, being innovative and bringing forward ideas and working within the limitations that we have, staffing wise and fiscally. It's just a really great group. It makes it fun. All the issues aren't always fun, but getting through it and having a good team to address those things makes it a little bit easier.
And we have your counterpart from West Lynn here, John Williams, and I'm sure he would agree with you. But speaking of John, we were asking what other priorities does Oregon City have at this year's legislative session. I know that on the West Lynn side of the river, they're asking for an additional $11 million to do seismic upgrades to the Willamette River Falls locks before it's transferred from the Corps of Engineers. And next month, we'll have Metro Councilor Christine Lewis as our speaker, who's heading up that task force. So hopefully that comes through also down in Salem. At the meeting last week with the mayor, we had several downtown Oregon City businesses there, and they talked about getting rid of parking meters. And if not getting rid of them, if they could go to 3 hours instead of 2 hours, so people aren't constantly having to feed the meter or having to move their cars. Is it possible to get rid of those parking meters?
Anything's possible. I imagine we'll come full circle in the conversation of why the parking meters were put in the first place, which was employees and owners were parking in front of other businesses and pissing them off. And so, it was put in to help try to mitigate and move your downtown core where you want the turnover of visitors coming to your businesses. So, can we go to 3 hours? Sure, we can have that conversation. I think the bigger discussion is, where's the appropriate place for employees to park when your business doesn't have on-street or off-street parking? It's going to be very interesting when the courthouse moves out. Really continue to work with our parking consultant to kind of look at what is that impact now, right? Over the years, you've seen this transition of downtown from heavy day use, and at 5 o'clock it kind of cleared out, right? And then you had some bars and whatnot, to we finally got to the point where we were seeing just as much activity, if not more, after 5 p.m. as we were seeing before 5 p.m., which is really great for activating your downtown. So now what happens, as the courthouse moves out, what does that do to that 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. time period and the impacts on parking? So, I think, looking at what those impacts are as this transition happens probably helps, make some decisions on what should happen with parking downtown. So, it's hard to say right now. Like I said, it'd be one thing if the county was not moving. We've got a lot of good data on how, changing from 2 hour or 3 hour to a radius of, 6 hour to 8 hour and moving that out of your downtown core to flip the turnover of the spots for the users is beneficial. But like I said, we're going to be seeing what these new impacts are, not only for on-street parking, but potentially a lot of those private lots that probably have off-street permit parking or off-street agreement parking with probably some of the uses that the county has down there. So I think it's going to be a transformative change. It's another one that was pretty, it's scary. We understand the impact. A lot of businesses rely on the foot traffic during the day, during the weekday downtown. I am hopeful in that, I forget when the first building was moved. The county commissioners were on Main Street. They moved up to red soils. We saw a lot of turnover at that point of buildings and reinvestment in the downtown that really drove kind of that first step of changing what downtown Oregon City was. You started to see these office buildings come in, employing lots of folks downtown. You saw a lot of new restaurants coming in, which was really something new for our downtown. So, yes, it's challenging, but I think it's also an opportunity as we change. So I think it's part of a larger discussion that we'll continue to monitor and try to address as we get better information about what the true impacts are.
And the question that I was just handed, which is kind of a follow-up to that, what about a centralized parking garage? And then I also, following up with what you said earlier, had a discussion with the Confederate Tribe of the Grand Ronde. Was it last night or recently? Planning Commission. Where do they plan to put everybody that wants to go look at the falls when that opens up?
So I think You know, as part of the parking plan that we look at, there's kind of early steps, medium steps, long-term steps, really trying to look at if, you know, a centralized parking structure downtown is needed, what does that look like? Where should it be located? You know, I'm not sure, you know, old numbers were 35 to 45,000 per slot, per stall for a parking garage. You know, that's a pretty expensive endeavor to take. How do you pay for that, right? You know, the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde incorporated a parking structure into the redevelopment of the Blue Heron property. I don't remember exactly where it's in the phasing. I'm sure it gets triggered once a certain number of square footage gets constructed on the site, when they kind of have to transition from at-grade parking to a structured parking lot. But I think those conversations will continue. Are there opportunities to work together? You know, maybe they need X spots and we ask for X plus Y spots in coordination between the city and Grand Ronde for any potential parking structures that would happen down there.
Okay, perfect, great, thanks. You touched earlier in your PowerPoint presentation on implementing urban renewal here in Oregon City and the issues that evolve around the charter. I know recently Westland, I believe, adopted an $88 million tax increment financing or urban renewal for their waterfront infrastructure development, and they're looking in their visioning for Highway 43 of also utilizing TIF for urban renewal financing for that project. Here's the question: what can we do to revise the Oregon City Charter to kick urban renewal into gear?
Lots of things. I mean, the Urban Renewal Commission needs to have their discussion about how do we address the City of Oregon City charter limitation that exists. And as I said, there's going to be multiple options. You know, close the district, right? Return the tax increment back to the taxing agencies that are there. Take the money that's saved from the district into the general fund and put that into economic development. What's interesting is that folks always talk about how they want local government to control what happens locally. So we generate about $3.2 million in tax increment financing that comes into the district. Closing the district would then allow the general fund to collect about $900,000, a little bit over. So essentially you're giving up, you know, $2.3 million of money that you could be investing locally in your community by closing the district. Certainly an option, you know, and that's something they're going to need to discuss. Could close the district and reopen it. What that does is reset the frozen base at which the tax increment financing is calculated off of. So essentially, if you closed the district, went back out, created a new one, your tax increment financing that you're bringing in year one is zero. So you need to build that base up, which is going to take decades to get to where we're at right now. Go out to a vote of the people, work with the constraints that are in the Oregon City Charter, go to a vote and get the debt approved. Second issue, go to a vote and get Section 59 removed. Another option would be enter into an agreement for a nominal amount of money that violates the charter, take it to a judge, and have them determine, you know, if our interpretation of the Oregon City Charter and its ability to limit what the district can do is legal or not, based on the previous finding from Clackamas County Circuit Court related to Section 59E. It was found to be invalid, and that was validated by the Court of Appeals. So I think there's lots of options. So I mean, I can't tell you which one it's going to be because it's really not my decision to make. But you know, I think that the Urban Renewal Commission has gotten to the point where yes, we need to do something, right? Whether it's to have it or not, or how to address it, that needs to be addressed. Because right now you don't have urban renewal in Oregon City.
And kind of a question to follow up on that, but I think you just gave us the answer to it. Is the city ready if another developer has a proposal for the landfill? We obviously know most likely urban renewal funds would need to be utilized in some form or another to deal with capping all of that material there. Do you have a response to that question?
No, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same issue. It would, you know, if the property needed $20 million, it would have to go to a vote right now to get voter authorization, or you enter into an agreement. It's going to be more than 1 year, and then you're into litigation. Neither of which are, you know, optimal. So that's why you need to get through this process to identify what is urban renewal going to be moving forward, rather than the last decade plus we've spent just kind of dancing around this question.
Okay, on to another subject. If there is a new pool, do we have property already available owned by the city for it?
No, we do not. So I think this is one of the priorities of the commission. Working through the facilities plan, I think the pool was built in the mid-1950s. It's inadequate in size, how it functions, the effort that goes into keeping it open every day is becoming more significant and more expensive every week. So, identifying one, is this something that the community wants and supports? And if so, then those conversations begin. Is it a pool that just focuses on the size of the residents of Oregon City? Is it larger because it has a larger draw? I think those are all discussions that are going to happen moving forward. But, when you look at, I think Lake Oswego's pool was, I think, just under 50 million for a pool, rec center, and some offices associated with that. So it's not, it's not just some couple $1 million when we build a pool type of a situation. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion that goes into what do we want as a community, how do we pay for that as a community, and then out of that becomes, where, do we need 5 acres, do we need 15 acres? And so I think those are all discussions that will happen over the next 2 years.
Has there been any estimates what it would take to renovate the existing pool? Is that even on the table?
If the commission wants to look at renovating the existing pool, we certainly do that. I think when you look at where it's located, the lack of parking, the lack of the resource itself, how it's built, it's questionable how much do you spend to try to renovate a building that already can't meet the needs of your community. We open up swim lessons for kids and they're gone within minutes. It is one of the most frustrating things we hear. But at the same time, we're balancing that with Oregon City swim team, private swim teams, trying to provide lessons. So there's just a lot of demands on a pool that back in 1955, I'm not sure what our population was, but I'm sure it's proportionate, exponentially less than the 40,000 we have right now. So, at some point, the infrastructure, the amenities we have just been outpaced by the population growth and the demands that we have on those facilities.
And I actually remember, as I went through Oregon City grade school, it was called Mount Pleasant at the time, taking swim lessons in that pool. So it hasn't been around for a long, long time. With the opening of the resource facility in the Miles fiberglass structure, what will happen to Father's Heart building? Does the city have any involvement with that?
No, the existing location of Father's Heart on Washington Street, it's a private property owned by a private owner, which has a lease agreement with Father's Heart to use the facility. So the city does not have a property interest in that facility.
Okay, folks, I'm running out of questions here. Come on, you can do better than that. I know you've got things on your mind that you want to ask the city manager, so don't be shy. At last week's meeting with the mayor, and you touched on it earlier in your slides, the topic of housing came up. And we recognize that we are in a tremendous housing shortage right now, not only in the metro region, but throughout the whole state. And Governor Kotek recently released some new concepts, priorities, incentives to try to achieve her goal of 36,000 new housing units a year. I believe the mayor said she was going to write a letter to the governor on some of her thoughts about some of these policies. Can you let us know what some of those new incentives are? Especially regarding middle housing.
No. I think some of them that I've heard relate to demolition, construction, reuse in historic buildings, historic districts. So I think this is one of the areas of concern. What does the Kenema National Register District mean to Oregon City or the McLaughlin Conservation District? Should those special places have additional protections when it comes to housing, or is housing, it's all housing everywhere all the time? And so when, I think that's one of the areas where we think about, a lot of jurisdictions don't have a national register district in their community. So what do you do with these places that exist now and try and balance that with the need for housing? I do hope the legislature focuses on infrastructure, right? I mean, it's something every jurisdiction's been asking for, trying to identify ways to come up with additional funding to provide what we're hearing from our community members who are already here, who are furious with the state of transportation and road condition and congestion, and the complete lack of investment in some of those infrastructure projects. And so, that's the thing my elected officials, our elected officials are trying to deal with. How do you balance this need for housing and the investment that has to occur with our existing residents who, aren't really happy with a lot of the changes that they're seeing? And that's a hard one, especially trying to explain, in a state that was built on, public involvement as one of the goal one of the statewide planning rules, to really have a lot of that taken out of the process, I think is hard for folks to know about, let alone understand. So a lot of that frustration of what's happening is being directed at the elected officials. And just saying it's a state mandate, folks don't want to hear it. And so, yes, housing is important. I think, like I said, we just brought on 347 apartment units on Maple Lane and Beaver Creek Road. We typically do about 100 to 130 housing units a year. So to say Oregon City isn't doing their part, I think is a bit disingenuous in that, this is a national issue of underbuilt housing. And so, I guess, trying to get to it is like, how do we be supportive of providing housing in the appropriate places while protecting those resources and those things that a lot of people have moved here and find important to them as well?
Okay. Yeah, we all know it's a very complex issue, and it's not going to be resolved overnight. Again, we're going to bounce around here with different topics. Will the city pursue a parks maintenance fee or bond to fund needed park improvements?
That'll definitely be part of the discussion. It would be needed, to implement. We just completed the Parks and Rec Master Plan, round numbers, about $100 million worth of improvements needed in deferred maintenance. Roughly 55 million of that's system development charge eligible, which means you got 45 million that you need to find a funding source. So, the commission historically has looked at a couple of options: a parks maintenance utility fee, increasing the amount of tax that we collect. We're one of the few jurisdictions in the state that have not levied the full tax rate that's applicable. Going out for a geo bond. So I think those are all options. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, there's only so many of ways to raise revenue. So I believe all those would be discussions moving forward. It was a question we asked in the community survey. Would folks support, additional taxes or providing additional revenue to provide for improvements to a pool? It's right around 48, 47% without any effort on the city of actually having a discussion with the community about, what that could be. So it seems like a good place to start the conversation, but yeah, I mean, at this point, I think every one of those would be on the table for discussion.
All right, well, you've got the mic.
Sure.
Let's get here next to you. Are there plans to finish the improvements at Tyrone S. Woods Park in the Caulfield neighborhood?
Yes, I just don't know the timing. We do have, because we did build phase one. I'd have to get back to you on what's going to make it into the next biennial budget for improvements to complete phase two at Tyrone S. Woods.
Okay. Is there room to increase the Oregon City tax rate? What area or programs would you recommend to take advantage of an increase?
As I stated, yes, there is. I believe we got about 55 cents of headroom in the tax rate. Really that's a discussion about what services the commission wants to provide for the community. I laugh during budget season. I talk about how amazing my staff are and how well we get along, and yet, we start this process and every one of them comes in with, a list of asks without figuring out how are we going to pay for those things. So, that's the process we go in internally, is do that arm wrestling so that when we get to the goal setting and the budget committee, we can kind of identify where are those areas. Some areas I've identified that we're trying to work actually within the existing revenues. The pool is open, 50, 60 hours a week. We have one manager there with a bunch of high school kids who are lifeguards and give swim lessons. It is one of the things that freaks me out the most and keeps me up at night. We have a library that has a director and a manager for 58 hours of service. They essentially split their time on the weekends after working Monday through Friday to be available because we don't have management staff to cover the hours of operations that we're providing services to our community. There's been discussions about an arborist or something similar in Oregon City. So, I think, trying to work within the funds that we have is our first priority. And then if there is a discussion or a need for expanding services or staff, then you have the discussion about, okay, here's how much more we would need to accomplish that. And then the decision's made, is that worth the investment or not? There's lots of ideas, I'm sure, that would come out as to how we could use additional funding, whether it's the areas I've identified just from an operational standpoint. Is it increasing the tax revenue to invest in parks deferred maintenance, right? Is it to bring on another police officer, right? I guarantee every department is understaffed and needs resources. So really it's about identifying what's the goal of the commission and where do they want to prioritize any additional investment through tax revenue that they might bring in. But it's been multiple budgets where we've held the tax rate at the existing rate and have not raised it and worked within the funds that have been available and provided to us by the community.
And right now, you have probably a A+ bond rating?
We do.
Okay, which is good to know. Doesn't get any better than that, does it? Okay. At last week's meeting with the mayor, a lot of the local downtown businesses talked about sometimes being nervous once it gets dark, and the recommendation was made, could we bring in extra lighting to go ahead and illuminate some of the alleyways, or just, make it feel more safe? The question is, what are the public safety measures being taken in the downtown core area with the new Miles Fiberglass Resource Center set to open in a year or 2, 3 years?
I guess it's interesting. Sometimes, after one of our meetings, we'll go downtown. And while we're down there, it's amazing actually how much presence Oregon City Police Department actually has downtown right now, right? So I think this gets back to having that discussion, because really, the resource center isn't going to probably operate much more than Father's Heart currently does, which means, Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday, they're available for the community members who are homeless from 8:30 or 9 o'clock till 3:30, 4 o'clock, right? Oregon City is already addressing those impacts throughout the community on a daily basis. And so really it's just a coordination and a communication effort about, how do we continue to provide that during those hours when the resource facility is not available. We have facilities opening up in Milwaukee, out in unincorporated kind of like Happy Valley area, which are bringing new resources that our officers can utilize, whether that be for overnight stays or immediate trauma care. So, the resources are beginning to come. And so, I think it'll be, how do we continue to do what we're doing and expand on that, realizing now we actually have some other resources coming online in the near future where we can actually take folks to that will hopefully get, the care that they need in that acute situation that's happening. It'll always be a conversation we have. I mean, obviously, one of the main goals of the city is to provide for the public safety of its citizens. I think Chief Davis and his staff have done a really good job of trying to be visible in the community, utilizing resources like our behavioral health specialists, bringing on the caseworkers who are going to be available to respond to those crises and those call-outs when they happen. Part of it is also communication. right? We're a town of 40,000 people. We can't be everywhere at once. Utilizing non-emergency, utilizing those calls so that our folks can come down and address the situation is part of it as well. So I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah, yeah. So this next question may be above our pay grades, but I'll ask it anyway. Will the current emerging Trump administration's freeze on issuing federal grants impact Oregon City's financial outlook?
I guess it depends. I think we're all trying to understand exactly what that means right now. We get federal funding to provide Meals on Wheels. I would like to think that that is a worthy program that once reviewed would have funding released to it. If not, yeah, we're going to have a discussion about that service because right now we don't provide funding for 100% of it. We've entered into agreements with the federal government for the WIFIA loan for our water infrastructure projects. Our reimbursement on our construction costs through that loan program going to be stopped. Once again, I would hope that arguing that providing public safe drinking water and upgrading those systems is a worthy investment at the federal level, that those funds will be released if they are locked. I think part of this is, we don't exactly know what's being funded, what's not being funded, what's being stopped and reviewed, what's not. It's going to take us, I think, all a little bit to kind of work through what do these mean? When are they going to be brought back online if they are stopped? We had a grant in coordination with multiple jurisdictions to look at opportunities for providing electric car vehicles and to improve efficiency of our public buildings. That grant's been stopped. Will it come back? I don't know. So that was something where we weren't spending public dollars. We were spending our staff time to put that together, but it was grant funded through a program. So we've been notified that is on hold. So that's stopped at this point. We have law enforcement grants through the federal government. This is going to take a little bit of time to work through. Is it a grant? Is it a loan? If you've already entered into agreements, essentially we sold, $38 million of debt. Half of that is a loan with the federal government. Is our loan now done? Well, our water projects get cut in half then. But once again, I think it's a little early to kind of know where this is all going to shake out.
I would agree. There's a lot more still to take place. Again, at last week's meeting with the mayor, she handed out a sheet that listed the city's priorities: housing, homelessness, infrastructure. One of them was tourism. Recently, you attended a meeting by the River Assets Task Force down here at the Monarch, where we talked about possibly utilizing the John Storm dock for larger maritime vessels for tourism. I think we had a couple of the captains of ships that do tourism on the Willamette River. Do we have an update as to what the results of that discussion? I know we were looking at, can we get the insurance on the gang? The city owns the dock, but the Corps of Engineers still owns the gangplank, and being able to get insurance based upon having more people on the dock because you have larger vessels. Do we have an update on any of that?
The update would be we've got this relationship, right? The Department of State Lands owns the land. You've got to deal with the Marine Board for the water, and then we own the actual facility, the dock itself. We've contracted with a firm, KPFF, to come in and look at the actual structural integrity of the facility. The proposal right now, it's been designed for, I believe, a 60-foot long vessel that's 40 tons. The ask is for a 100-foot vessel, and 80 tons, making up a number there. But really trying to work with KPFF to understand what's the existing condition of the facility. In its current configuration, could it actually support a larger vessel? Is there enough draft during the summer low flow events for a boat to get in there without hitting the bottom? So that's the work that's beginning there, is to try to get an understanding of what the existing facility can actually do and how it was designed, while at the same time reaching out to our state partners to have the conversation about, we want to expand this by 40 feet. What's that take in terms of the agreements that we have in place or don't have in place right now to be able to accomplish that?
Well, Tony, I have no more questions. You're off the hook. You're out of the hot seat. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we want to appreciate City Manager Tony Konkol for being here today and giving us an excellent PowerPoint presentation, not only from the accomplishments of 2024, but the goal and vision that he has going forward into 2025. You know, Oregon City is a unique place, and I remember Economic Development Manager James Graham talking about this. We're a city in the confluence of two major rivers, the Willamette and the Clackamas, in the metro region. How many cities can actually say they have that? Very, very, very few. So how we capitalize on that unique opportunity is up to each and every one of us through our elected officials, commissions, groups that are here to support. So again, on behalf of the Oregon City Business Alliance, I want to personally thank each and every one of you for being here today, because it's not about the name, it's about the people behind the name. And you're the ones who make us who we are. So again, I hope you fill out the white card, kind of let us know your thoughts and comments about today's event. Give us ideas and recommendations going forward in 2025 with additional forum topics. Again, we already have several that we know are going to be important: healthcare, transportation, tolling, homelessness, and the list goes on, housing. So we will be touching on those. As I said earlier, Metro Councilor Christine Lewis will be our speaker next month, and I know she's going to be talking on a wide range of topics that Metro is engaged in, converting the Expo Center into an athletic facility complex, the reopening of the Willamette Falls locks, obviously Governor Kotek's housing mandates. It's a long list, so hopefully you'll have a lot of questions for her. One last little request.